Charlene's parents were local Jewish community leaders, and the family was active in community life. Fruma, her mother, was one of 4 children born to a Jewish family in a small Polish village. Simcha, her father, was a professor of philosophy at the State University of Lvov. Her sister was 14 when the Germans invaded Poland and died a few years later. Charlene was 10 when the Soviet Union invaded Poland, and she was 12 when the Germans did.
They all lived in Warsaw, Poland. In Soviet Union in 1941, the Germans invaded the Soviet Union, and Charlene's father was arrested and he was never seen again.
In 1941, in the summer, all of a sudden, we heard bombs and the airplanes flying overhead. And after a few days, the Germans marched in, very much like the Russians did a few years ago. And again, I mean, there was no bloodshed as far as I can recall. They came in with tanks. They came in, the soldiers looked they were much better dressed. And they came in, and people again greeted them with flowers. And they were very welcome in our town. A lot of people were very happy that the Germans came in and that the Russians were leaving. If there were fights, they were outside of the town. So really, there was very little fighting in Horachov. But 1941, early summer, was when the world became completely topsy-turvy for the Jews. When the Germans came in, from the very beginning, they concentrated and they let it be known that the Jews are the ones that they are going to try to murder all of us. What they did, I don't recall if it was the first or second day after they came into Horachov. They went around with a list and they looked for people by name. These were people who were leaders, the Jewish leaders, and my beloved father was among them. They came into the house, they burst in, and they asked for him, and my father saw him. He tried to get out the back way. They caught him, and they led him away. He never even said goodbye. I'll never forget that look in his eyes.
World War II began with the German invasion of Poland September 1st, 1939. Charlene, her mother, and sister were forced into a ghetto the Germans established in their hometown.
In 1942, Charlene and her mother fled from the ghetto after hearing rumors that the Germans were about to destroy it. Her sister attempted to hide separately but was never heard from again, so Charlene and her mother assumed she had died or was taken by the Germans.
At the river's edge is where Charlene and her mother hid in the underbrush. They avoided discovery by submerging themselves in the water for part of the time.
I was, and I'm speaking from a personal point of view, and I know I'm not the only one. There I was, an orphan, a survivor of unspeakable pain and atrocities of the war. And nobody extended a helping hand during the war. Now, after the war, wouldn't you think we would have priority to go out or to get out of Germany? But no, I had to wait 3 long years. There were quotas. There were always quotas. There were quotas to get into the United States. When I finally did get a hold of my family in the United States, because I remembered my grandmother's address, they guaranteed that I would not be a burden to the government. And yet, I had to wait 3 long years before I was allowed to come to the United States. Meanwhile, I tried on my own to get a student's visa, and I attended the University of Heidelberg for almost, over a year. But that would have given me a student visa. I must say that the people at the University of Heidelberg, bent backwards to accommodate me. There were such gaps in my formal education. It was non-existent. And yet I took some tests and they helped me, and I was accepted as a full-time student. And I will never forget that. I'm grateful for that. But I still had to wait 3 years to come to the United States. And I don't think that was right, to treat us in such a way.
She was later liberated by Soviet troops and kept in displaced persons camp somewhere in Europe.
In the late 40s, she immigrated to the United States to live with her grandmother.